everybody. This is Margie Meacham, and this is the Learning to Go podcast. With me today is Jo Cook. She is the Deputy Editor of Training Journal, and she is the President and Director of her own company, Lightbulb Moment. So let me tell you a little bit about Jo. As Deputy Director of Training Journal magazine and website, she focuses her time on groundbreaking discussion webinars, of which I've had the pleasure and honor to participate, and she is very visible at speaking events. Since Training Journal is the only independent monthly print magazine in the UK for learning and development professionals, she has a lot of opportunities to see the trends that are happening in our industry. And so that's one of the reasons why I've asked her to join us today, to kind of tap her brain and see what she believes is trending in the short and longer term future for us as learning leaders. The other thing that I'd like her to talk to us about is her role as the director of her company, Lightbulb Moment. They specialize in developing, facilitating, training others to deliver great live online training sessions, virtual classrooms, webinars, and blended digital programs. If you have had the pleasure to catch a TJ Wow webcast, then you know that Jo has the skills to really bring your virtual training to the next level through her training programs. And I highly recommend that both the magazine and the TJ Wow webinars. As any learning professional, I think we're sometimes bad about enhancing our own learning and continuing our own personal development, which is one reason why I do this podcast. So we're going to learn more right now about Jo, and I'd like to start, Jo, with welcoming you and asking you to tell us first about Training Journal.
Well, thank you very much, Margie, for that lovely, lovely introduction, and really pleased to be here, and it's lovely to work with you again. So Training Journal, as you say, it's the only monthly independent print magazine in the UK, but if you're not in the UK, we also have a website where our magazine goes up every month, and also loads of articles and videos, and as you said, the TJ Wow webinars, the discussion webinars that we do every month, they're all up there, and we're dedicated to trainers and learning and development professionals. They could be in a company, so it could be a corporate trainer, it could be somebody who's a consultant or freelance, and you know, we're really proud of our offering. We have about 49,000 page views a month on the trainingjournal.com website, and of those about 31,000 unique visits. So we're doing, we think, a great job, and really enjoying all the interaction with our readers and our listeners on our own podcast, and people coming along to the TJ Wow webinars as well and discussing different L&D topics.
Wow, congratulations. I knew that it was quite extensive in audience. And you have a background in teaching and journalism, don't you?
Ooh.
So does that help you with doing something that's more in, that has a one foot in the digital world and one in the classic paper print world?
Yeah, it's an interesting time that we're in, and so I trained as a journalist when I was 19, which is only a few years ago, I wish I could say. And so I did a lot of writing then, and then moved into much more of the teaching and the training world, and went through there. So in that time from when I studied when I was 19, 20 odd years ago, you know, print industry has just gone downhill, as everybody knows. So we have that's probably why we're the only printed magazine every month with Training Journal. And it is really interesting, the approach that we have on the magazine is slightly different for the website, because obviously going out once a month with a certain page count and so on, you have to be very selective with what you're printing there. But also our website is then immediately accessible for anywhere around the world, and anybody can go and have a look at the vast array of things that we've got, including our digital magazine that we publish, and be able to see anything from the last few years. So it is kind of an interesting thing, but as with all careers, you don't have to stay in one place, and anything you learn in one part of your career I find that I use in others. So it's really nice to have those skills that go across in different places.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. And at the end of this podcast, we are going to give the website address to everybody, and it will be in the write-up on our site so that you can check it out. So let me ask you this, Joe. In your position as that that deputy editor, who really you're making those decisions and or contributing to those decisions about what do we prioritize, what are we putting in the magazine and on this site. It seems to me that you're in a really unique position to be seeing what's trending and what the learning professional ought to be paying attention to. Can you give us a couple of the highlights of where you think our profession is headed in the next few years?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's a really fascinating role to be in, and I work with Debbie Carter, who's our editor-in-chief, and she does most of the decisions around the magazine. And it's interesting that a few months ago, obviously the end of last year, she put together our feature forward list. So for the 12 months of 2017, what is the general topic of each magazine going to be, which actually our discussion webinars follow that topic as well. So Debbie's been in a great position to pick out those topics, and then we refine that as the year goes on. And what we're seeing a lot of at the moment is always discussion around technology. And a really big area is VR or virtual reality, AI, the artificial intelligence areas, also the augmented reality. And if you're not sure about what those differences are, there's loads of stuff on Google that you can go and find. So they're really big things, but also technology in the sense of how do we move from traditional e-learning, perhaps that self-paced click next e-learning, which doesn't always have a great reputation when it's done on a budget, through to actually part of a digital blended learning operation. So it's interesting to take my experience at Lightbulb Moment, where I focus on that, into Training Journal and see that that's a trend that people want to know about and read about, but also then to take what I learned from Training Journal magazine and share that back to the rest of the industry around what people are wanting. And that also goes into L&D skills for the future, and I think we'll probably discuss that separately, but the kind of consultancy skills that we need as well.
Okay, great. Thanks for that summary. And I would say that tracks very well with the kind of things I've been following and covering on my blog and the guests that have shown up here in the podcast. Well, let's talk about Lightbulb Moment now, because it does dovetail with your work at the magazine. And I believe one of the trends that you and I are both tracking is more and more interest in live virtual training, video components to training, and other uses of technology, as you say, beyond the classic read a screen and click somewhere type of e-learning. So we're seeing a great evolution there, and that is something your company does. So tell us a little more about your company.
Oh, well, thank you very much. And you're absolutely right. You know, the things that you're putting on your blog and your guest interviewers, it's a huge area, and lots of organisations are really embracing it and embracing it well. There are lots of organisations that want to embrace it, but want to embrace it well, but are kind of struggling a little bit, and they're probably where I do most of my work. So it's largely around kind of 2 or 3 different areas. It can be around kind of using webinars or the virtual classroom area, which could be webcasts, it could be kind of small amounts of cohorts, it could be large numbers of people on a webinar, and looking at using those as not replacements for face-to-face, but in addition to, because not always can we afford to travel around the country, either ourselves to deliver something, or to get attendees around the country, fly them or move them, or hotels and lunches and all of those things. So there's a huge kind of cost and green factor involved in using webinars or virtual classrooms. And my job is to help take people who are maybe trainers of some years experience, just as I was, and move into that virtual world where it can be really scary. The idea of talking at a computer screen and not being able to see people, and how could you possibly do something on a computer that would ever be as good as face-to-face? Well, I help people with that, because by the end of a couple of hours online, usually people are going, wow, I never knew it could be this good, and I want to do some more of this. And then kind of the wider pieces from the trainer piece, if you like, are around the consultancy and just, how do we work on this whole strategy of going from face-to-face training to getting people used to the idea of it. Well, here's a video, go and read something, here's a community, write a blog post, come to a virtual classroom, and that mixture of things. And that's a really meaty piece of work that I enjoy as well.
Can you give us just a few of your favorite tips that you share with your clients for our listeners?
Of course, always. I could talk all day about this, Margie, you know me. And so I'd say one of the things, if you're thinking about the virtual classrooms, if you're a face-to-face trainer or designer, and in either you've done a few or you're moving into the virtual classroom or webinar area, it's all about the engagement, just like face-to-face. It's deconstruct what you do face-to-face and then build it in a new way. So, for example, I would normally look around a room that I was in, or a conference or a seminar, and interpret the body language that was there. Online, I can't do that. I can't see people. So instead, I ask a question. That's interaction and engagement. And it could be something really simple, like I'm telling a story, and I say, click the green check mark or the tick if you're more of a European listener, to say, yeah, I've had that experience too. And that's almost like looking around for a nod. It's not exactly the same, but it's about learning those equivalents. So that's one thing. And the other thing I would say, if you were designing virtual classroom stuff or webinars, I would say look for the organisational outcome first. Why on earth are we investing this time? Secondly, design what's important for the learners to be able to practice whatever they actually need to do at work, the performance. And then worry about the technology later, because pretty much anything you do face-to-face, there's an online equivalent that you can do. If you use a flip chart, we'll do a whiteboard. If you turn to the person next to you and chat, we'll use private chat in the conference system. So don't get bogged down by the technology. Focus on the business need and the learners first, and the technology will come afterwards.
Okay, those are great tips. And I just want to add a little bit of validation with that. I just read a statistic that the average user, the facilitator, say, or instructor of a virtual classroom is only using about 8% of available features. So that tells you that as a profession, we still have a long way to go, despite how long this technology has been available. I think I did my first virtual training maybe 15 years ago. We are still not taking full advantage of it. Why do you suppose that is?
I think there's a few different things, and it's really good actually. In your book Brain Matters, you do a whole chapter around interaction and engagement in virtual classrooms and the neuroscience behind that, which was really great to read that kind of research back up that practice. And I think the main reason is people haven't experienced it done really well. So if you go to a webinar that's just someone speaking to you, there's no chat window, you ask a question that maybe doesn't get answered properly to your satisfaction, then of course you're not going to think it's great for learning. When you're comparing that to a face-to-face classroom where you can say, hey, Mr. or Mrs. Teacher, can you please answer my question directly? You're chatting with other people, you're having coffee with them. You can't replicate that really well online, then people aren't going to be interested in it. So if people can come along to an event where there is a chat window, they get to know each other, they start building a relationship, you have the telephone or microphone unmuted, you have activities in breakout rooms, you have great discussions that are facilitated, that then is going to be worthwhile to people. So if they haven't experienced it, they're not going to sign up for it. And a lot of the decision makers are at that point. It's perhaps people who are slightly below that decision maker level that know how good it could be, but influencing the decision maker is really challenging.
Okay, I agree with you, and thank you for the plug. By the way, it's nice to run into someone who's read the book. If you haven't read the book, folks, I really hope you do so in the future.
Yeah, it's really accessible, really lovely read.
Thank you. So, Jo, what are you working on right now that has you most excited?
Oh gosh, a few things. So continuing with Lightbulb Moment for a moment, we're literally just launching our own free public access webinar program, so you can find that on our website, and that's really exciting. And we'll just hopefully offer loads of skills and opportunity for people to dip their toe into the webinar and virtual classroom water, as well as, you know, keep their own skills up to date. And we've got some more things we're working on the end of the year, but we'll have to hold off for that, because we're working on some things behind the scenes.
Oh.
And as for Training Journal, well, we're going to continue our TJ Wow webinar series, the discussion webinars, which was brilliant to have you on talking about neuroscience. And we really like those. They're groundbreaking because they're not about presentations, they're about people discussing learning, and they're absolutely great. And the other thing that we've got coming up at Training Journal is we have our awards ceremony in December. So we're just starting to sift through all the people that have submitted for an award in all sorts of different categories, and I'm judging the Technology Award, and I'm really looking forward to that coming up much later in the year.
Oh, that is exciting, and I'll be watching for that to see the award winners, because I always pick up a lot of great insights from seeing the people that are being recognized by their peers. So very exciting.
Yeah.
So how does someone get in touch with you, Joe, if they want to follow up either about the magazine or about your company, and maybe they want to take advantage of some of your expertise there?
So lots of different websites coming up, folks. For Training Journal, it's really easy. It's trainingjournal.com. On Twitter, it's @trainingjournal, and you can go and look on Facebook and LinkedIn and just search for Training Journal. It's a lovely big kind of red TJ logo. You'll come and find us. And if you want to find out a little bit more about Lightbulb Moment, you can go to lightbulbmoment.info. And you can find me on Twitter as well. I am LightbulbJo, J-O. And also, again, we've got a group on Facebook. We've got a page on Facebook, so you can come and kind of ask questions about virtual classrooms. And we're on LinkedIn, all the normal places.
Okay, fabulous. And that's, folks, if you are looking for the links, they are also on our page at Learningtogo.info. This podcast is available on iTunes and also plays directly off our site. So depending on where you are accessing it, you may or may not see those links right now. So if you jump over to Learningtogo.info, you can get all that information on Joe and any other podcast guests. So my guest today has been Jo Cook, and she is the Deputy Editor of Training Journal. She is also the director of her own company, Lightbulb Moment, and we will be hearing from her more and more in the future, I'm sure. Thanks for joining us this morning, Jo.
Thank you so much, Margie.
Bye, everybody. We'll catch you next time.